The great station floated in the darkness between stars. It was called the Eternal Chorus, and it was the heart of galactic power. 12 ancient species had built it together 50,000 years ago. From here they ruled over 300 worlds and countless billions of lives. High Chancellor Vorin stood at the center of the council chamber. He was tall and thin, with pale blue skin and 4 eyes that never blinked. Behind him, representatives from all 12 elder species watched in silence. A holographic image of a small blue planet rotated slowly in the air before them. Earth, the homeworld of humanity. Vorin had never liked humans. They were young and loud and refused to follow the old rules. 30 years ago, his scouts had discovered them just as they learned to travel between stars. Such primitive creatures, he had thought. They would learn their place soon enough, but they had not learned. They had spread across the outer rim of the galaxy like fire through dry grass. They built colonies on worlds the Assembly had marked as forbidden. They traded with species who had not yet earned the right to trade. And worst of all, they refused to bow. "High Chancellor," said Ambassador Kellis of the Sithani Collective. She was short and covered in silver scales that caught the light when she moved. "We have received their response." She touched a control panel, and a human woman appeared in holographic form. She had black hair and dark eyes and stood very straight. Her name was Hannah Park, and she spoke for Earth in all matters with the Assembly. "The people of Earth do not recognize the authority of the Galactic Assembly," Hannah said in the recording. Her voice was calm and clear. "We will not pay tribute. We will not limit our expansion. We will not kneel to species who have done nothing to earn our respect. Earth stands alone, and Earth stands free." The recording ended. Silence filled the chamber. Then Vorin began to laugh. It was a cold, sharp sound. One by one, the other representatives joined him. The Voroth, with their heavy armor and thick tusks. The Udin, with their many limbs and clicking voices. The Makai and the Sithani and all the rest. They laughed at the small blue world and its foolish people. "They have no idea what they face," said Lord Merrick of the Voroth Empire. He was the largest being in the room, a mountain of muscle and bone. "My fleet alone could turn their world to ash." "There will be no negotiation," Vorin declared. He had already made his decision. "I will send them our terms. They will accept or they will burn." He drafted the ultimatum himself. The words were harsh and final. Humanity would surrender without conditions. They would give up all weapons. They would hand over their colonies, their ships, their technology. Earth's resources would be divided among the Assembly members. And for the crime of defiance, humans would serve as workers and servants for 3,000 years. "Send it," Vorin ordered, "and prepare the fleet. 800 ships should be enough to convince them. 800 capital ships. The greatest armada assembled in 10,000 years. Each vessel was the size of a small city, armed with weapons that could crack a planet in half. They gathered at the edge of Earth's solar system and waited. On Earth, the message arrived in the middle of the night. Secretary General Tai-Ho Kim read it alone in his office. He was a quiet man with gray hair and tired eyes. He had led the United Earth Council for 12 years, guiding humanity through its first steps into the galaxy. He had hoped for peace. He had prepared for war. His hands did not shake as he read the Assembly's demands. He simply nodded, as if he had expected this all along. Within the hour, the people gathered in the council chamber deep beneath the mountains. Admiral Sora Yoon was the first to arrive. She was small and thin, with silver streaks in her black hair and a smile that never reached her eyes. She had spent her entire life studying war, and she was very good at it. Defense Minister Do-Yan Lee came next. He was young for his position, barely 40, but he had rebuilt Earth's military from nothing into something that made him lose sleep at night. Intelligence. Director Mingi Cho arrived last. She was the quietest of them all, a woman who knew secrets that could shake governments. Her agents were spread across 100 worlds, watching and waiting. Tai-Ho showed them the ultimatum. "They read it in silence." 72 hours, Mingi said when she finished. "That is how long we have before they attack." 800 ships, Doyan added. Our scouts have confirmed the count. They are positioned just beyond the outer planets. Admiral Sora studied the words on the screen. Her smile grew wider and colder. They think we are afraid, she said. They think we will fall to our knees and beg for mercy. Will we? Taiho asked. He knew the answer, but he wanted to hear it spoken aloud. Sora looked at him. Sir, we have spent 30 years preparing for this moment. While the assembly watched us and laughed, we built weapons they cannot imagine. We trained soldiers they will never see coming. We developed technology that breaks every rule they believe in. She stepped closer to the holographic display and pulled up new images. Ships, hidden in the asteroid belt. Weapons platforms, buried beneath the ice of distant moons. Networks of satellites that could blind an entire fleet in seconds. They gave us 30 years to get ready, Sora continued. They told us exactly what they planned to do. They showed us every weakness in their defenses. She shook her head slowly. They have no idea what they have awakened. Taiho looked at each of them in turn. Sora with her cold confidence, Doyan with his grim determination, Minji with her quiet certainty. These were the people who would decide humanity's fate, and we are agreed, he said. We do not surrender. We do not negotiate. We show the galaxy what happens when you threaten Earth. Pressed a button on the console before him. Across the planet, in bunkers and bases and hidden installations, alerts began to sound. Activate Protocol Sunrise, Taiho ordered. It is time to teach the assembly a lesson they will never forget. Far above, the stars continued to shine. The assembly fleet waited in the darkness, confident in their power. They had crushed rebellions before. They had broken worlds before. This would be no different. They could not have been more wrong. In 72 hours, the galaxy would change forever, and humanity would announce its arrival in fire and thunder. Fleet Commander Torith stood on the bridge of the Eternal Will and watched Earth grow larger on his screens. It was a beautiful world, he had to admit. Blue oceans and green lands and swirling white clouds. A shame it would burn. He had conquered 17 worlds in his long career. He had faced enemies with greater numbers and better weapons. None of them had stood against the might of the Voreth Empire for more than a few days. This mission would be even easier. Humans were young and weak and had no idea how war was truly fought. Commander said his first officer, the human government has not responded to our ultimatum. The deadline passes in 6 hours. They are probably arguing among themselves, Torith said with a grunt, trying to decide who will surrender first. Pathetic creatures. He looked out at his fleet. 800 capital ships, each one a monster of metal and fire. Thousands of fighter craft. Millions of soldiers waiting in the transport vessels. Enough firepower to crack Earth like an egg and scatter its pieces across the void. The humans had perhaps 50 ships. Old designs. Weak weapons. They had bought some technology from traders over the years, but nothing that could challenge the assembly. This would not be a battle. It would be an execution. All ships prepare for final approach, Torith commanded. We will be in weapon range within 2 hours. Begin charging the main batteries. Across the fleet, massive guns began to hum with power. Targeting systems locked onto Earth. Soldiers checked their weapons and said prayers to their gods. Everything was going according to plan. Then the lights went out. It happened so fast that Torith did not understand it at first. One moment, his bridge was alive with light and sound and activity. The next moment, there was only darkness and silence. Report. He shouted into the void. What is happening? No one answered. The communication systems were dead. The screens were black. Even the emergency lights failed to activate. Torith stood in perfect darkness, unable to see his own hands in front of his face. Across the fleet, the same thing was happening on every ship. Navigation systems shut down. Weapon controls stopped responding. Life support began to fail. 800 capital ships, the greatest armada in galactic history, became floating coffins in an instant. On the bridge of the Dawnbreaker, Admiral Sora Yun watched the sensor readings with quiet satisfaction. The human vessel was small and fast, hidden behind one of Jupiter's moons where no assembly scanner could find it. Cyber warfare package delivered, reported Lieutenant Commander Taiwan Park. He was young and brilliant. One of the architects of the attack. Their systems are completely locked out. They are running security protocols that are 400 years old. It was almost too easy. Sora nodded slowly. This was the first phase of the plan. The assembly had never faced an enemy who could fight in the digital realm. They had grown lazy and confident, using the same computer systems for centuries because nothing had ever challenged them. That laziness would cost them everything. Begin Phase 2, she ordered. Launch the ghosts. From hidden bases throughout the asteroid belt, small ships emerged into the void. They were called ghosts because no sensor in the galaxy could detect them. Each one was matte black and shaped like a blade. It's designed for one purpose: to kill capital ships. Lieutenant Ji-Ho-Han guided his ghost through the darkness toward the enemy fleet. He was 26 years old and had trained for this mission for 3 years. In his cockpit, the only sound was his own breathing and the soft hum of his engines. He thought about his family. His mother, who had cried when he joined the military. His father, who had said nothing but held him tight for a long time. His grandmother, who had told him stories of the old wars, of occupation and resistance, of a people who had faced impossible odds and refused to give up. For Earth, he whispered to himself. For everyone. The flagship Eternal Will appeared on his screen. It was enormous, a mountain of metal drifting helplessly in the void. Without power, it could not see him coming. Without weapons, it could not fight back. Without engines, it could not run. Ji-Ho locked his targeting system onto the ship's reactor core. His finger rested on the firing button. Ghost 7 to all ghosts, he said into his radio. Fire at will. Press the button. The quantum disruptor missile was a weapon the assembly did not believe could exist. It attacked the basic forces that held matter together, causing chain reactions that could not be stopped. The Eternal Will began to glow from within, blue fire spreading through its corridors and chambers. Then it broke apart, silently, beautifully, like a glass sculpture shattering in slow motion. Across the fleet, the same scene repeated 800 times. Ghost pilots delivered their payloads with perfect precision. Ships that had conquered worlds disappeared in flashes of blue light. Soldiers who had never known defeat died without ever seeing their enemy. The battle lasted 40 minutes. When it was over, the greatest armada the galaxy had ever assembled was nothing but debris floating in the darkness. Admiral Sora watched the final explosions fade from her screens. Her face showed no joy, no triumph, only cold satisfaction. Confirmed kills on all 800 capital ships, Taiwan reported. His voice was shaking slightly. No survivors detected. Our casualties are 0. 0. 800 ships destroyed, millions of enemy soldiers killed, and not a single human life lost. The assembly had expected an easy victory. They had received annihilation. Send the recording to Earth, Sora ordered, and then broadcast it to the assembly station. I want them to see what happened here. On the great station Eternal Chorus, High Chancellor Vorin received the transmission in his private chambers. He watched in silence as his fleet died. He watched as ships that had taken centuries to build vanished in instants. He watched as everything he believed about power and strength and order was proven wrong. His hands began to shake. His 4 eyes filled with something he had not felt in a very long time. Fear. How? He whispered to the empty room. How is this possible? The humans had not just defended themselves. They had not just won a battle. They had shown the galaxy that everything the assembly believed was a lie. Their technology was not primitive. Their soldiers were not weak. Their world was not helpless, and this Vorin realized with growing horror was only the beginning. On Earth, the news spread quickly. People gathered in streets and squares, watching the footage of the battle on giant screens. Some cheered. Some cried. Some stood in stunned silence, unable to believe what they were seeing. Secretary General Tai-Ho Kim addressed the planet that night. His voice was calm and steady, but there was iron beneath the words. Today, we showed the galaxy that Earth will not kneel, he said. Today we proved that humanity will never surrender. But this war is not over. The assembly will respond. They will send more ships, more soldiers, more weapons. and we will be ready. Pause and look directly into the camera. We did not choose this fight, but we will finish it. The destruction of the fleet sent waves of panic across the galaxy. On 100 worlds, leaders watched the footage and felt something they had forgotten how to name. Fear. True fear. The kind that wakes you in the middle of the night and will not let you sleep again. On the great station Eternal Chorus, the assembly fell into chaos. Representatives shouted at each other across the council chamber. Ancient alliances cracked under the weight of blame and terror. The Vorath demanded immediate revenge. The Sithani pleaded for caution. The Uden began evacuating their core worlds, convinced that human ships would appear in their skies at any moment. High Chancellor Vorin tried to maintain order, but his voice had lost its power. He had promised the assembly an easy victory. He had laughed at the human representative. Now, 800 ships were dust, and the galaxy was watching. We must respond with overwhelming force, Lord Merrick of the Vorath Empire declared. His voice boomed through the chamber like thunder. Gather every ship from every member world. 2,000 vessels. 3,000. However many it takes. We will burn Earth to ashes and scatter its people across the void. And what if they destroy that fleet too? Ambassador Kellis asked quietly. Her scales had turned pale, a sign of deep fear among her people. What if they have weapons we cannot even imagine? Then we will build more ships, Merrick growled. We will never surrender to primitives. The assembly voted. The Vorath won. A second fleet would be assembled. 2,000 capital ships from every corner of assembly space. This time, there would be no mistakes. This time, humanity would die. On Earth, Intelligence Director Mingy Cho received the news before the assembly had finished voting. Her network of agents and informants stretched across the galaxy like an invisible web. She knew what the assembly was planning almost before they knew it themselves. One agent in particular had made this possible. Her name was Nari Jung, and she had been living among the Mekai for 7 years. She worked as a translator in their government. A small and forgettable position that gave her access to secrets that could change the course of history. Nari's latest transmission arrived in a burst of encrypted code. Minji decoded it personally, trusting no one else with the information inside. The second fleet was real. 2,000 ships, gathering at a staging point 300 light-years from Earth. They would be ready to attack in 30 days. Their plan was simple and brutal. Destroy every human colony first, cutting Earth off from its resources and allies, then bombard the homeworld from orbit until nothing remained. But the transmission contained something else. Something that made Minji smile for the first time in weeks. Nari had found detailed maps of assembly space. Defense networks around every homeworld. Power grid locations. Population centers. Weakness after weakness that the elder species had never bothered to hide because no one had ever threatened them. Before Minji brought the information to the War Council, they gathered in the bunker beneath the Himalayas, surrounded by screens showing the movement of enemy forces across the galaxy. 2,000 ships, Defense Minister Do Yan Li said heavily. Even with our technology, that is a difficult number. We will not fight them ship to ship, Admiral Sora Yoon replied. She pulled up the maps Nari had provided. We will make them understand that this war cannot be won. Not by them, she explained the plan. It was called Operation Midnight. It was the most ambitious military action in human history. Humanity would strike all 12 assembly homeworlds simultaneously. Not to destroy them. Not to kill their people. Simply to appear in their skies, weapons armed, and then disappear before anyone could respond. A message written in the language the assembly understood best. Power. The key was technology that the assembly believed impossible. Dr. Yoonho Baek, the greatest scientist Earth had ever produced, had spent 20 years developing what he called fold gates. They were stable wormholes. Doorways through space that could transport ships instantly across thousands of light years. The assembly had tried to build such devices for centuries. They had always failed. Yoonho had succeeded because he approached the problem differently. He did not try to force space to bend. He asked it politely, using mathematics that made other scientists weep with confusion. Commander Hyun Wukong would lead the strike force. He was a serious man with a scarred face and steady hands. He had fought in border conflicts against pirates and smugglers, small wars that no one outside Earth remembered. This would be different. This would be the war that everyone remembered forever. 12 task groups, 12 targets, 12 chances to show the galaxy what humanity could do. Secretary General Tae-ho Kim addressed the strike force before they departed. His voice carried through the speakers of 1,000 ships. "Remember who we are," he said. "We are not conquerors. We are not destroyers. We are human beings, and we fight because we must, not because we want to. You will show the assembly our power, but you will not use that power to harm innocents. We are better than that. We must be better than that." The fold gates activated with a sound like reality tearing at the seams. Ships vanished from Earth's solar system and reappeared in the skies of alien worlds. On Meccan Prime, High Chancellor Vorin was sleeping when the alarms began to scream. He rushed to his window and looked up at the night sky. Human ships hung among the stars like new constellations. Small vessels, compared to assembly warships, but they were there. They had appeared from nothing, bypassing every defense, every sensor, every fleet positioned to stop them. Vorin watched as the lead ship oriented itself toward his capital city. He could see the weapons batteries glowing with power. He could imagine the fire that would rain down, the destruction that would follow. The ships held their position for exactly 30 seconds. Then they vanished. Vorin stood at the window for a long time after they left. His hearts were beating so fast he thought they might burst. The humans had not fired. They had not destroyed anything. They had simply shown him that they could. The same scene played out on all 12 homeworlds. Human ships appearing without warning, weapons locking onto targets, seconds of terrible silence, then disappearance. When the reports reached the assembly station, the shouting stopped. The arguments ended. Even Lord Merrick, who had demanded blood and vengeance, sat in stunned silence. The humans could reach them anywhere, anytime. There was no defense. There was no escape. The greatest military powers in the galaxy had been shown in 30 seconds of terror that they were helpless. Ambassador Kellis was the first to speak. "We need to talk to them," she said quietly, "before it is too late." For once, no one argued. On Earth, Admiral Sora received the reports of successful operations with a small nod. The message had been delivered. Now came the harder part, making peace with enemies who had wanted to enslave humanity. Just days before, she looked at the stars on her screen and wondered what the future would bring. Ambassador Kellis had never been to Earth before. She had spent her entire career dealing with humans from a distance, reading their messages, watching their broadcasts, dismissing them as primitives not worth her time. Now she was traveling to their world under a flag of truce. Everything she believed was crumbling around her. Her ship was small and unarmed. The humans had guaranteed her safety, but she did not feel safe. How could she, after what she had seen? The fleet destroyed in 40 minutes. Human vessels appearing above her own homeworld like ghosts. Power beyond anything the Assembly had ever faced. Earth grew larger in her viewport. Blue and green and white, just like in the holographic images, but somehow more real, more alive. She could see the lights of cities glittering on the night side. Millions of humans going about their lives while their leaders reshaped the galaxy. A human escort vessel guided her to a landing platform in a city called Geneva. It was smaller than she had expected, nestled among mountains with snow on their peaks. The air was cold and thin when she stepped outside. She pulled her robes tighter around herself. Secretary General Tae-ho Kim was waiting for her. He was older than she remembered from the recordings, with more gray in his hair and deeper lines on his face. But his eyes were sharp and clear, and when he extended his hand in the human gesture of greeting, his grip was firm. "Ambassador Kellis," he said, "welcome to Earth." She followed him inside, through corridors that were simple and functional. No grand displays of wealth or power. No statues of conquering heroes. Just clean walls and quiet efficiency. It was not what she had expected from a species that had just humiliated the greatest powers in the galaxy. They sat across from each other in a small conference room. A window looked out over the mountains. Taiho offered her water, and she accepted, grateful for something to do with her trembling hands. "You could have destroyed us," she said finally. The words came out before she could stop them. "On McCain Prime, on all the homeworlds, your ships were right there. Why did you not fire?" Taiho was quiet for a moment. He seemed to be considering his words carefully. "Because destruction was never our goal," he said. "We wanted to be left alone. Your assembly refused. So we showed you the consequences of aggression. But we are not monsters, Ambassador. We do not kill for pleasure or conquest." "Then what do you want?" Before Taiho could answer, the door opened. 3 more humans entered the room. Admiral Sora Yoon, whose face Kellis recognized from intelligence reports. A young woman with short hair and calm eyes, introduced as Dr. Hai Hung Song, and a man named Doyon Lee, the defense minister. They sat beside their leader, and Kellis felt very alone. Taiho activated a holographic display. Images began to appear in the air between them. Strange images. Terrible images. "This is Earth's history," Taiho said. "We want you to understand why we are what we are." The images showed fire and ice and death. Kellis watched as Taiho explained each one. 70,000 years ago, a massive volcano nearly wiped out our species. We were reduced to perhaps 10,000 individuals. By all rights, we should have gone extinct. New images, wars, diseases, famines. Throughout our history, we have faced catastrophe after catastrophe. Plagues that killed half our population. Wars that destroyed entire civilizations. Climate changes that turned fertile lands into deserts. Asteroids that fell from the sky and burned away whole regions, at least watched in growing disbelief. No species in the assembly had ever faced such constant struggle. The elder races had risen to power in a gentle galaxy with millions of years of peace to develop their technologies. They had never known true hardship. "Every generation we came close to destruction," Taiho continued. "In every generation, we survived. We adapted. We improved. We learned that the universe does not care about us, so we must care for ourselves." Dr. Hung Song spoke for the first time. Her voice was soft but carried clearly across the room. "Your civilization stagnated 50,000 years ago," she said. "You've reached a certain level of technology and stopped advancing. Why? Because you had no need to advance. You had conquered everything that challenged you. You had peace and comfort and safety." She pulled up new diagrams. Technical specifications that made Kellis's head spin. "We developed quantum computing, cybernetic integration, and dimensional folding technology in less than 30 years. We created weapons that attack the fundamental forces of reality. We built ships that can cross the galaxy in seconds. All because we assumed that anything we met in the stars would try to destroy us." "We were right," Admiral Sora added. Her smile was cold. "The first alien species we encountered demanded our unconditional surrender. You proved everything we feared about the galaxy." Kless felt sick. The assembly had looked at humanity and seen primitive creatures to be conquered. Humanity had looked at the assembly and seen an existential threat to be neutralized. Both sides had been right in their own way. "What do you want?" she asked again. "If not destruction, then what?" Taiho leaned forward. His voice was firm but not unkind. "Recognition, equality. The assembly will acknowledge Earth as a sovereign power. There will be no tribute, no subjugation, no threats. In exchange, we will share our medical technology. We have noticed that many assembly species struggle with diseases that we cured centuries ago. We will trade fairly. We will help defend assembly worlds if external threats emerge." Kellis stared at him. "You would help us? After everything?" "We are not your enemies, Ambassador. We never wanted to be. You made us enemies when you demanded we kneel. We are offering you a chance to make us allies instead." She thought about the Second Fleet, still gathering at the staging point. 2,000 ships preparing to attack Earth. If she returned with this offer, would the assembly accept it? Or would they choose war and destruction? And if the assembly refuses? She asked quietly. Taiho's expression did not change. Then we will do what we have always done, survive. Whatever the cost. We have faced extinction many times, Ambassador. We are still here. The question is whether you want to be our partners in the future or a lesson in our history books. Kellis looked at the humans around the table. The Admiral with her cold smile, the scientist with her calm certainty, the Minister with his grim determination, the Secretary General with his iron will. They were not bluffing. They were not negotiating from weakness. They had shown the galaxy their power, and now they were offering mercy. She thought about her homeworld, her family, the billions of lives that hung in the balance. I will take your offer to the Assembly, she said finally. I cannot promise they will accept. Taiho nodded. That is all we ask. But Ambassador, please make one thing clear to them. He stood and walked to the window, looking out at the mountains and the sky beyond. We did not start this war, but we will end it. One way or another. The Assembly fractured like glass under pressure. When Ambassador Kellis returned with humanity's offer, the Council exploded into chaos once again. Some species saw wisdom and peace. Others saw only humiliation. Lord Merrick of the Vorath Empire was the loudest voice against surrender. He stood in the center of the council chamber, his massive form casting shadows across the gathered representatives. We are the conquerors of 1,000 worlds, he roared. We do not bow to primitives. We do not accept terms from species we should have crushed beneath our feet. He stormed out of the chamber and ordered his fleet to attack immediately. 1,200 Vorath warships broke from the staging area and raced toward human space. They would show the galaxy that the old powers were still strong. They would burn Earth and restore the natural order of things. The war lasted 11 days. Human forces did not meet the Vorath in open battle. They did not need to. Ghost ships appeared behind enemy lines and destroyed supply vessels. Cyber warfare programs crippled navigation systems and sent ships crashing into each other. Fold gates allowed human strike teams to appear inside Vorath command ships, disabling them from within before vanishing like smoke. On the 9th day, a single human vessel appeared in orbit above the Vorath homeworld. It broadcast a message to every screen on the planet. Admiral Sora Yoon's face appeared in every home, every workplace, every government building. Your fleet has been reduced by 60%, she said calmly. Your supply lines are destroyed. Your commanders are dead or captured. You can continue this war, and we will systematically dismantle everything you have built over 10,000 years. Or you can surrender now and save what remains of your empire. She paused, letting the words sink in. You have 1 hour to decide. The Vorath Emperor, an ancient creature who had ruled for 300 years and never known defeat, personally transmitted the surrender. His voice shook with rage and shame, but he spoke the words. The war was over. One by one, the other assembly members accepted humanity's terms. Some did so willingly, grateful to avoid the Vorath's fate. Others did so reluctantly, forced by the reality that resistance was suicide. Within 3 months, every elder species had signed the new treaty. The signing ceremony took place aboard the Eternal Chorus, the same station where the ultimatum had been drafted. Secretary General Taiho Kim represented Earth. He sat across from High Chancellor Vorin and the other assembly leaders, surrounded by the flags of 12 ancient species and one very young one. This is not conquest, Taiho said as he signed the document. This is partnership. Humanity does not wish to rule the galaxy. We wish to explore it, to learn from it, to grow alongside its peoples. We offer our technology, our friendship, and our protection to any species that deals with us honestly. He looked around the table at the alien faces watching him. But make no mistake, we will never again allow anyone to threaten our existence. We will never again accept terms of surrender. We will never again kneel. That is not who we are. High Chancellor Vorin asked the question that had haunted every assembly member since the First Fleet was destroyed. How did you advance so far, so fast? We have been traveling the stars for 50,000 years. You have been among us for 30. How is this possible? Admiral Sora answered. She had earned the right to speak for humanity in matters of war, because we never had a choice, she said simply. Your species rose to power in a safe galaxy. You faced no predators, no extinction events, no struggles that tested you to your limits. You grew comfortable. You stopped pushing. You believed you had achieved perfection. She leaned forward, her dark eyes hard as stone. We fought for survival from the moment we climbed down from the trees. Ice ages, predators, diseases, wars. Every generation faced a new threat. Every generation had to adapt or die. We learned that the universe is cruel and does not care about us. We learned that comfort is the enemy of progress. We learned that struggle makes us strong. She gestured to the window where human ships patrolled alongside assembly vessels for the first time. You gave us 30 years to prepare. You announced your intentions. You underestimated us at every single moment. And now you learn what happens when you corner humanity. Her voice dropped, cold and final. We do not surrender. We do not break. We adapt. We overcome. And we remember. In the years that followed, the galaxy changed in ways no one had predicted. Humanity spread across the stars, building colonies on worlds the Assembly had declared uninhabitable. Human scientists worked alongside alien researchers, pushing the boundaries of knowledge in every direction. Human doctors treated diseases that had plagued the elder species for millennia. Human engineers built structures that defied the laws of physics as the Assembly understood them. New threats emerged. Ancient machines awakened in the galactic core, remnants of a civilization that had died before the Assembly was born. Creatures from other dimensions probed the edges of reality, searching for weaknesses. Wars broke out among the younger species. Conflicts that threatened to spread across entire sectors. Humanity faced each challenge the same way they had faced the Assembly. With determination, with innovation, with an absolute refusal to accept defeat. 20 years after the treaty was signed, Dr. Yunho Beek sat in his small office in Seoul. He was old now, his hair white and his hands spotted with age. But his mind was still sharp, and he still watched the news feeds every day. Keeping track of the galaxy, his work had helped humanity claim. Today, the feeds showed something special. Human explorers had made contact with a species from another galaxy entirely. New aliens, with new knowledge, new perspectives, new possibilities. The galaxy that had seemed so vast was suddenly just a small neighborhood in an infinite universe. His granddaughter Yunji sat beside him, wearing the uniform of the exploration corps. Tomorrow, she would board a ship and venture farther from Earth than any human had ever traveled. She was 22 years old and not afraid of anything. They still do not understand, do they? Yunho said softly. The Assembly. The elder species. They look at us and see lucky primitives who stumbled onto power. Yunji smiled. She had her grandfather's eyes and her grandmother's stubborn chin. What did they not understand? Yunho looked at the screen, at the images of human ships meeting alien vessels in the space between galaxies. That we were never the primitives they thought we were. We were never the weak species that needed to be conquered for our own good. He reached out and took her hand, his grip still strong, despite his age. We were just getting started. Yunji squeezed his hand and stood to leave. She had a ship to catch and a universe to explore. As she walked out the door, Yunho turned back to the window. Earth spun below the orbital station, blue and green and white, just as it had always been, just as it always would be. Humanity had answered the galaxy's challenge. They had refused to submit. They had fought and bled and sacrificed. And they had won. Now the real work could begin. The stars were waiting.